So in this video, what we're going to learn to do is to use our AI Husky Lens to be able to classify a couple of objects and use that data to turn on and off a relay, which will enable us to turn on and off a light bulb. So in essence, we're using object recognition to control an actuator, which will turn on and off a light bulb. Okay? So the first thing we need to do is train it on a couple of objects. So I've got a cat again, and I've got an Arduino box this time. So the first thing we're going to need to do is on our Husky Lens is make sure it's got power, and that's just a micro USB cable plugged into power on the other end. And I've got it onto object 1. So again, remember, make sure you're in the right algorithm mode, and that's just using the little toggle on the left. So make sure that you're in object classification. Okay, so you can just go back and forth until you get to object classification. All right, and then it'll say object ID 1 in the top left, and when you're ready, you'll see the little crosshairs pop up. You just take the picture. All right, and then it'll say object 1, and it's learned it. Okay, and then you do the next thing. You move over to the next object. Crosshairs are there. Click the button, and it'll say click again to learn it. And now you've got two objects. And you can test it by just moving the camera over the two objects, and it should say object ID 1 when you're over object 1, object ID 2 when you're over object 2, right? Which is pretty cool. Alright, so now I've got my two objects trained, and they're stored in the camera. So we're going to use those two guys to do something. Okay. So this is slightly different than what we did before with our two ifs, but it's pretty similar. Our on start is going to be exactly the same. I'm going to put a little heart icon to show that I've got the program downloaded. I'm going to go and install my Husky Lens extension again. Okay, just by searching for Husky Lens. Husky Lens shows up, and I'm going to initialize the I2C port. Okay, and I am going to put in a little check mark right after that will show up on my little microbit to tell me that it has initialized. And you can put a pause block in afterwards. You don't really need it if you're paying attention that you see the check mark. And I am going to use an algorithm. I'm going to switch it to my Husky Lens object classification algorithm, which is perfect. All right. Now, what we need to do now is to actually write the core program that is going to help me turn off my relay. Okay, so what I want to do now is I'm going to go to Husky Lens, and I'm going to store my results. So I've got my data, and it's going to store it. Okay, now I want to know if it's going to actually show up in my little frame. So when you look at your Husky Lens, I've got a little box here, right? And so you want to make sure that it's going to show up. So if I just put a series of if statements in it, it's going to actually cause my relay to go a little hokey. It'll turn on and off a lot, and we don't want that to happen. I want to make sure that my relay isn't just turning on and off, on and off, on and off. So if you just put if statement, if statement, if statement, your relay might end up going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth a lot. So we don't want that. So we're going to do it slightly differently this time, but it's still similar. I'm going to go to logic. I'm going to go to my if statement, and I'm going to put that in. Okay, and make this a little bigger here. I'm going to go to Husky Lens. This time I'm going to scroll down till I see Husky Lens. Check if ID 1 frame is on the screen for the result. So I've got that. Okay, and what I want to do is, if it's 1, I'm going to go down to my advanced. I'm going to go down to pins, and I'm going to turn on my pin. And this time I'm going to plug my relay into pin 8 here. So I've got my shield for my microbit, and I'm just going to pop it into like P8. So I'm going to make sure that's P8 right there. And I'm going to change that to 1, because again, in digital land, 1 it's on, 0 is off. And I'm going to say under my Husky Lens, I'm going to have it show me, and it's going to say light is on. And I'm going to put it at 150 and 100. And just as a reminder, on your Husky lens, 0, 0 is the top corner, 320 by 240 is the bottom. So again, that's going to be somewhere roughly in the middle. Okay. Now I'm going to copy this whole if statement right here, and I'm going to put it right underneath that if statement. And this time I'm going to say, hey, if it's a 2, I'm going to have it to be turned off. Oops. There we go. And I'm going to say light is off, and I'm going to emphasize that with a couple exclamation marks. Okay. So that's really all there is to that. And I am going to click download. My microbit's already plugged in. Alright, notice the heart is still there. Alright, I have got my Husky lens already plugged in. Okay. And here's why it's useful to have it set up as frame. Otherwise, your relay will start to come on and off instantly when it starts to see it. So now my light is inside the frame, so it says light is on. Okay, so now I'm going to see if I can plug my, so it's working, so let's plug my light in. Okay, let me make sure my light is on. Okay, so now let's see, light is on. I'm going to move over to the Arduino. Light is off, on, off, on, off, on. And now if I move over here, notice my object is not inside the frame, so my relay isn't coming on and off all the time. Okay, so that will keep your relay from just switching on and off. Otherwise, because my Husky lens says object ID 2, so it's sending the 2 to this, but it's not inside the frame. So it's a little smarter coding it where it's looking inside the little frame. So that makes like our coding a little more clever. And that's really how we use an actuator to turn our light bulb on and off with our Husky lens. It's kind of cool.